And we welcome you back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Well, I welcome you back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Who are we kidding, right? There's no we here. There's we in the control room and we on the staff, but I am the one welcoming you back. Anyway, joining us once again, I think it might have even been a week ago tonight. I'm not sure. I say tonight because we're here on the East Coast. It's dark as night outside, so I say it's night, but it's not dark where Ruben is, I don't think. Ruben Navarette, Syndicated Columnist, joins us once again. Hello, sir.
Steve, good to be with you.
Good to talk to you. All right. So when last we spoke, we talked about immigration reform, and we had our differences of opinion. And then I was very pleased. I got to say I'm pleased. As long as you spell my name right, I don't really care what anybody writes about me. Pleased to see that you put part of our conversation or your interpretation of part of our conversation in your one of your most recent columns. GOP blunders drive Latinos to Democrats. So I just wanted to readdress some of that, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, and you'll see I've got the column right in front of me, and I know you do too. You'll see that you said I mentioned you or challenged you. What I did was I challenged some of the things you said. There's an important difference, in our business. We communicate professionally for a living, right? Between attacking the person and attacking the argument. And you'll see in these paragraphs, I did what not enough people do in the immigration debate. They attacked often the person instead of the position of the argument.
No. I didn't take it as an assault at all. Like I said, spell my name right. I mean, I don't consider it an attack. And this isn't going to be confrontational.
You'd have to try hard to find an attack in this because it basically says this is what Steve said, and this is where I think Steve is wrong.
All right. Well, let me just go over it and tell you why I'm not going to say took exception because I didn't really take exception, but here's where I just want to make clear to the people.
Sure.
And whenever anybody writes something, just like when I say something, if the other person's not there to explain or defend themselves, quote unquote, then there's no opportunity. So I'm glad you're giving me this opportunity.
Steve, on that point, I understand, Steve, that you've not been behaving yourself. In the last few days, you've been talking about me behind my back, not giving me a chance to defend myself. So I'm happy to.
Well, I said that you wrote a column. Yes. Well, that's why you're on. We can't have you on every day, but that's why you're on. Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to point that out because you've been talking about me behind my back. I'm here to talk to you directly to your face.
Well, yeah, but then I could say you wrote about me behind my back. So I mean, what's the?
It's a nationally syndicated. Wait a minute, Steve. It's a nationally syndicated column. It's not like being off in a corner someplace. It's right out in the open.
Okay, then this is a show that you could see worldwide. So I don't understand the difference.
The difference is, you just said to me that when somebody writes something, you want to be able to confront that person directly. And I think that's great.
And that's what we're doing, yeah.
Yes, that's great. But by Steve's rules, then, for the last few days, we've been talking about me behind my back.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean behind your back? You mean to friends of yours or on the air here?
No. On the air.
Right. That's not behind your back. But we booked you to come on. Right away I said let's book him. So I don't know if you wanted to come on prior to this day, but so sure I talked about it, just like you wrote about me without me being able to respond. I mean, so if I'm guilty, so are you.
Okay, so we're both just two guilty guys that communicate.
Okay, all right, fair enough. All right, so let's just talk. So when you say a self-described Republican, I don't know what that means exactly, except anybody is a self-described anything. If I say, what are you? And you answer liberal or Democrat or conservative or Republican or independent or atheist, you're self-described. So I don't know what that tries to add as if it's illegitimate and not true.
It tries to point out that, and there's no right or wrong answer here. There are some radio talk shows, as you know, Sean Hannity, Limbaugh, and others who refer to themselves primarily as conservative. They go out of their way to say they're not Republican.
Right.
Now, listening 2 or 3 times to our tapes together, the tape of our conversation, you made it clear that you are a Republican. You said as a Republican, blah, blah, blah. So that's what that means.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So let me move on. That's not the point of contention, if there is one. Who recently tried to convince me that Latinos don't care about immigration anyway. Now, there's a comma, and you go on, but that's not what I tried to convince you, that they don't care about immigration. But let's go on. At least not as much as jobs, the economy, and that's absolutely true. And it's not me who was trying to convince you. I was trying to convince you, but you left out that I used and cited the Pew Hispanic poll that they took as the people left the voting booths in 2012. And there were widely reported polls that showed that on the list of concerns for Hispanics, immigration did fall behind jobs in the economy and other issues too. So you're making it sound like I have this wild notion when in fact I cited polls that were true.
No, I don't think you have a wild notion. I said you tried to convince me of it, and I think that you can reach for research, you can create on your own. But the interesting thing is, you go back to the tape, you and I agreed on that point. I actually said in response to your point, you're absolutely right, and the Pew Center is right. On most days in most states, when nothing's happening, the water is calm, as I put it. The top issues are jobs in the economy, their health care, education. Those are typically what Hispanics care about, much more than immigration. And then I put in a caveat and I said, however, if you go to Arizona in 2010 when everybody was shooting at one another.
All right, but we're not talking about, with all due respect, Ruben, we're not talking about what was said on the show. I mean, we are, but we're talking about how you took that and wrote it in the column. You didn't say, which, by the way, I agree with Steve, or by the way, he's right, or by the way, he cited polls. You made it sound like you don't agree with that in your column.
No. It just said, it's cut and dried. It says, who recently tried to convince me that Latinos don't care about immigration anyway, at least not as much as jobs in the economy.
Period. Right. Then there's a period. Right. Then there's a period. In other words,
yeah, you tried to convince me of that.
Right. So, but you didn't tell the folks that you agree. And you didn't tell the folks that I'm right. You just made it sound like, to your fans and your readers, it sounds like this self-described Republican tried to convince me that they don't care about immigration as much as economics and jobs.
I understand your point, but did you just hear what I said? I had a caveat when you and I both spoke the first time.
But we're talking about the column.
You're right under normal circumstances that they care about these issues less, but when there's a flare-up, and then you and I had a subsequent conversation where we said, and it was actually a good point, where you said if you're an immigrant, a recent immigrant, like the ones who voted, let's say who legalized and become naturalized citizens, they can vote, right? Like the ones who voted for Chris Christie in New Jersey and Union City. Well, in that case, those people care about immigration as a top issue. It is a top issue for them. So my point is that it's much more complicated than just simply to say, well, they don't care about immigration as much as they do jobs in the economy. It's more complicated than that.
All right, let's move on.
In our first interview together.
Let's move on. I understand that, but the folks reading this column don't know that. We're talking to Ruben Navarette, who is a syndicated columnist here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, and by the way, I appreciate you doing this, because you didn't have to do this, and you don't have to defend what you write. I don't have a right to I mean, if that's the way the world worked, people would be explaining themselves and calling people up every single day. I'm a public figure, so I don't have a right to this. I appreciate what you're doing. You don't have to do this. I want people to know, and I want you to know that I don't feel it's incumbent upon you to do this. This is nice of you to do, and I think it makes good radio and TV.
You and I have something in common, and that's because we communicate for a living. We are often taken out of context. Our words are not understood. We have to go back and say, read the column or listen to the tape.
Right.
And so this is why I'm here. Go
okay,
ahead.
well, let's go on. And then, and if the first assumption is wrong and it turns out they do care, well, Malzberg said they're never going to vote for Republicans in significant numbers anyway, so why bother going after them, especially if it means that the GOP might turn off its base of conservative voters. I don't remember. To be honest, I didn't listen to the tape. I know I did say most of that. I know I said I don't think I ever said why go after Hispanic voters. I think I know I've preached all for years. We need to go after Hispanic voters based on, and I might have said this in the interview, and I don't know, that based on the similarities in values when it comes to education, family values, jobs, right to life, etc. Educate, but so I would never say so why go after them anyway. That's the biggest misrepresentation, I think, because I think we need to court Hispanic voters based on our values, not based on immigration reform, not by passing some bill which will never make the media happy, never make the Democrats happy, and will continue to portray Republicans, no matter how much they give, as villains anyway within the same community, within the same group of Hispanics that view them as villains now. That's my point. But absolutely go after Hispanics and blacks, because we have much more in common with them as Republicans, I believe, as a group, than do the Democrats.
And I think if you go back to the last couple of sentences where you're talking about the conservative underpinnings and the values, I agree with those 50 or 60. And I think if you go back to the last couple of sentences where you're talking about the conservative underpinnings and the values, I agree with those 50 or 60. You're combating, and to some degree, people like me, we're combating this evil triangle, okay, that are working against us. It's the liberal media, it's the 501c3 foundation-driven groups in Washington, D.C. that push immigration reform, and it's the Democratic Party. And those three people work in concert to do things that make me angry, like pretty much, abuse and manipulate the Latino community and make the two things that make me angry, like pretty much, abuse and manipulate the Latino community and make it. The reason we got in this conversation, though, is because in terms of what you just said, this idea of, whether you can go after these votes or not, there is an argument in the Republican Party that this is kind of a fool's errand. No matter what, if you go after this population of people, you're always going to come up empty, and it's going to put you sort of sideways with your conservative base, and that's what this column is about. That's what that paragraph in that sentence was about.
And then the following sentence. After you described our conversation, which I think we've both, I think we've hammered out that we're in agreement on a lot of this, and that I presented facts, and I didn't say everything that's implicated. Then you say, which really gives the impression that, man, am I a Looney Tune, or not you, me? My goodness, where to begin?
You and I disagree. It doesn't have to be that you're a Looney Tune. It means, and you know this as well because you do this for a living. I disagree with people all the time. They disagree with me all
I know
the time.
that, but where do we again, you agree that the polls as I presented them to you showed what I said they showed. You agree that it's not the main concern, number one concern of the Hispanic community, except under
normal circumstances.
Except under some other circumstances. You agree with me about how they'll be portrayed as villains. You admit that I said we should court Hispanics, but not on the immigration issue, because they're not going to vote for us anyway. Not ignore Hispanics. So and then you say, my goodness, where to begin? It makes it sound like
that last part, Steve, where you said you agree with me that we should court Hispanics. You said you hadn't listened to the tape. I did.
Yeah.
If you go back and listen to the tape, you'll see that what you said at several points was this notion that somehow you did not make the case that this was a population conservative in its
Okay, I usually do. If I didn't, that's why I said I'm not sure, but I always do. Okay, fair enough. It boils down
to sort of this sense, and you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who feel this is a fool's errand. This is really a trap.
No. I always say
a trap that we're trying to lure conservatives into, and you're not going to get these votes anyway. But that's what I heard. That was my takeaway.
But what I've based on what I've always said, like I said, you could be 100% right and have every right to hear that and believe that. But based on my beliefs and what I've always say is we do need to outreach to those communities, but not on immigration reform, because based on the polls that I cited, it's not that important under normal circumstances, as you pointed out.
You and I disagree, and we'll disagree on that because I think it's the elephant in the room. If you don't deal with that issue first,
elephant in the room. What, did you write the Time magazine cover? Come on.
I hated. That's so bad. I got to agree with you. That cover's so bad.
Of course it is.
I think that they would somehow say, "Oh, I had no idea that somebody could read this way."
I know. Hey, wait till you hear what Chris Matthews said. He made fun of a crushing defeat of the Democratic opponent for Christie. He said Christie crushes his wife during sex. He said that at a speech.
It's the liberal media.
Yep. Hey, listen, Ruben, I got to go. Yeah. I'll have you back in a week or two. We'll talk more. Thank you very much, Ruben Navarette, ladies and gentlemen, on the Steve Malzberg Show. Very nice of him to come on and do that. Don't go away.